Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Day in the Life of Vintage Classic Specialist. And by the way, happy Monday. So let's see what happened here today. Let's go ahead and get right to it. So Rafa, not surprisingly, continued working on the barn door here and continuing on wiring. And he spent most of the day on, if you saw the thumbnail, you know where this is going, on this baby. So his gauge pod was pretty much a mess, and I don't necessarily mean cosmetically, although it needed some help there too. But pretty much all of his switches had issues. So the headlight switch, the interior switch, which does the dome light and the wipers, and then the ignition switch, and so. These are a little different on barn doors than on later, so barn doors and split windows have a very similar gauge pod. So very much different than later cars, including like oval windows and stuff. So on these, the switches are kind of like built into this big Bakelite piece of plastic here that you see everything kind of mounted on. So you basically have to like take the backs of these switches off, and then you can kind of get at the guts of the switches. And so they were just a huge mess on the inside. And one of them, the owner had said, was like sparking when he would try and turn it. I don't remember off the top of my head which switch it was, but they were all in pretty bad shape. And so Rafa completely disassembled all three switches and cleaned them up on the inside, cleaned the contacts, sandblasted the little contact pieces on the insides, and then resoldered most everything there that's soldered, which is a lot on these. Lots of wires on these are soldered, and you see there's that big brass bar there that connects the ignition switch over to the headlight switch and stuff like that. So these were not really very, sort of modular like later dashes where you had separate switches that were, you could just undo the screw terminals or later ones, undo the spade clips and take them apart. The switches are literally like soldered together with these big brass bars and stuff, and some of the wires are soldered onto the switches. There's just much more sort of primitive and I guess less serviceable, if that's the right word for it, than on later ones. So Rafa pretty much spent the whole day going through all these switches and stuff, and I think he had the speedometer apart too. I'll have to check with him on that. But yeah, pretty much went through and restored all this stuff, got it all working good. And then also got it looking good here cosmetically. So yeah, there you go. Huge deal getting this whole thing working properly and stuff. Most of the day actually was spent on this unit here. So other than that, he did work also on some more wiring here. So you can see the fuse box right there. He got a lot more of that hooked up, and I think he ran the wires down to like the brake light switch and got some other wiring and stuff done. So yeah, pretty much all day wiring, most of which was on this gauge pod right here, but. That's a huge deal. The wiring on these is relatively simple. So a lot of it is, kind of going into this thing right here and connecting that to the main harness and stuff and the lights and everything else. So pretty simple though on these, much more so than later cars. These don't have any relays, no nothing. All the power on these runs through switches. So no annoying relays or anything like that on later cars. Everything just goes right through the switches. So there you go. Anyway, that was pretty much Rafa's day. So my day and Jacob's day, he came in this afternoon. We were working on the split window here again. And so I kind of started out on the back of the car here. And I did get the lower shock mounts that you can see there. So those came from DKB Metal. Look those guys up if you need. They make a lot of stuff like these lower shock mounts. So on split windows, the lower shock mounts are not part of the end castings of the axles there. They're actually like a separate bolt-on piece. And we were missing those for this car. So went ahead and bought those from DKB Metal and super nice pieces, by the way. And they came already like powder coated and everything. They've got the correct castle nut on them. You see there, instead of just like a nylock nut, which would be completely wrong. Still need to put cotter pins in those, but yeah, I was very pleased with the quality of these pieces here. You know, all the way down to the detail of having a castle nut and you know, using that with a cotter pin. So yeah, I got the rear shocks on. Actually, let me back up a little bit. Before I put the shocks on, they were pretty ugly. And so you can see here, well, in fact, here's the two front ones, which I haven't mounted yet. So yeah, I went ahead and cleaned up the shocks and repainted the bodies, and not this part up here, which is this plastic sleeve. But yeah, the metal parts and the eyes and stuff like that, they were super ugly, way too ugly for this car. So again, cleaned those up, sanded them, and got a good layer of paint on them. And then, yeah, I went ahead and installed the back ones there with those mounts that I was just talking about. So did that, and then I cleaned his backing plates. They were also just, you know, this is such a nice car, and these things had paint like chipping off them, and at some point they looked like they had leaky wheel cylinders or something, so the paint was all kind of coming off, and they looked terrible. So I went ahead and spent some time cleaning these up, and then ultimately repainted them. And then finally went ahead and put them together with the bearing caps and stuff like that. So these are on here for real now. Now I just need to hunt down some wheel cylinders for the back of this car, and then I can go ahead and put his rear brakes together. So that is pretty much what happened at the back of the car. So at the front of the car, and I don't have any show and tell for it at the moment, but Jacob took his front assemblies, which were, you know, the drums and the spindles and the link pin assembly. So all that stuff was still together. I just like pulled them off intact when I partially disassembled this front end. So Jacob went and like pulled all that stuff apart, pulled the brakes apart, and kind of like I did on the back there, he took the backing plates and cleaned them, sanded them, and then painted them. He painted the spindle link pin carrier assemblies, you know, cleaned those and painted those. And then I think he also sanded or clean sanded and painted the drums. So the whole front end assembly for this should be ready to go together. So maybe do that tomorrow. We'll see. So yeah, he did a great job on all that stuff. It looks much better. Again, this car is really nice, and that stuff was just, you know, had a lot of like chipped paint on it and was just ugly. So we're spending the extra few hours to clean stuff up and get some fresh paint on stuff and make it look as nice as the rest of this car here. So the other thing that happened was I went ahead and installed his steering box. It's not connected yet, but yeah, steering box and pitman arm. And went ahead and ground some paint off the steering box and off the front beam itself, so that actually makes a ground there so that the horn will work when we get that all hooked up eventually. So yeah, lots of little details like that. You know, you don't just slap the steering box on there. You gotta clean paint from it and from the beam to make sure that it's gonna make electrical contact, because that's how your horn works on these. So I think that was kind of like the main things that happened. Oh, one other thing is I did pull out his pedal assembly, which by the way is really nice. It seems like somebody at some point powder coated and everything. Somebody at some point got really, really aggressive with the grease gun, and there was like grease everywhere on this thing. So spent a while cleaning this up. Looks great now. The main reason I pulled it out is because I need to replace the clutch cable. And so, of course, the pedal assembly's got to come out. So I took the opportunity to clean it and stuff like that. So, yeah, I do have his clutch cable. I've got a new throttle cable. I've got heater cables. All that stuff we'll be replacing. And I think I have it all now. So, okay, I believe that is pretty much it, other than some brake parts I cleaned and clear coated, stuff like that. But, yeah, that's basically it for today, guys. Didn't really do anything on any other cars. What I did notice on this one, though, somebody mentioned how high it was sitting, And I think that the front beam is probably, the link pins are probably shimmed very incorrectly on this car, because I pushed as hard as I could on that bumper and tried to like get the front suspension on this car to move. I couldn't budge it. I don't think I could move that front suspension on this car like a millimeter. It is locked in place, which tells me that most likely the link pin bushings, or shims rather, are just completely out of whack, and so that the link pins are probably binding. That's my guess. But as this car is sitting right now, it has no front suspension, and so I think it's basically just sitting with the front suspension at full droop, and then it won't go down any. And then the back, it does seem to have suspension. I bounced the back of the car. However, I think that the spring plates are indexed a bit too high. So the plan is, when I actually get to this car, is I'm going to go ahead and tear his front end apart, or at least as far as like removing the link pin carriers off the torsion arms, and then re-shim them and stuff like that. Make sure that things are actually like free to move and not binding up, because right now the front of this thing will not budge. So once I get the front sorted out and it'll kind of, settle down properly, which probably be 1.5 inches or so lower than it is now, then what I'll do is I'll figure out how much I need to lower the back so that the car has the correct stance, which again is like slightly nose up. But right now it's basically a Baja bug, so we got to fix that. And it has no front suspension. So anyway, yeah, that's just one thing that I kind of noticed today on this car. So that is actually it for today, guys. Appreciate you all watching, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye.